Tonight's newsmaker is California First Lady Maria Shriver. After an emotional year for her family, she is now able to focus on the future of women, hosting, as she does every year, the Women's Conference. Thousands of prominent and interesting women, as well as a few men, gather with the hope of transforming women's lives. And I sat down with Maria Shriver this afternoon. We began by talking about just how she hopes to achieve what is a pretty lofty goal. Check it out.
Well, I'm trying to get women of all walks of life to see themselves as capable of being architects of change. I think so often we think someone else is going to change the world for us, someone else is going to run for office, someone else is going to change the company. And I really try to encourage women that they have their own voices and that they can be who they think someone else is. And so I try to really mix up the lineup. You get people here that, you would never expect to be in the same place at the same time, because I'm really a strong believer that women have multiple voices. We don't speak with one voice. We don't look the same. We come from different backgrounds, and we've made very different decisions, and I'm trying to honor as many of them as possible.
Let me mention some of the panels that you have here. You've put together an interesting mix of people, I think. One, for example, Cindy and Meghan McCain are together with race car driver Danica Patrick and her father, talking about how to raise strong kids. I mean, is that kind of the goal, I guess, in turning out strong, powerful women? Is parenting and what goes into it?
Well, I think parenting is incredibly important. I have 4 kids, and I look at it as the most important job in my life, and I've made decisions in my career to try to support that. And I think we all struggle with how do you give a kid self-esteem. I know for me it's a daily struggle. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? So I'm interested in parents and their journeys with their kids.
Another one that struck me is this focus on grief and resilience. And you're going to have a panel with Elizabeth Edwards, Susan St. James, and Patrick Swayze's widow speaking out publicly for the first time. And usually, I think, or maybe traditionally, people have sort of hidden, during times of grief.
Right.
And you believe very much that this is something we should be talking about.
Well, it's one grief specialist, kind of one of the most well-known guys, and it said to me, we are a grief illiterate nation, and just the fact that you're having that conversation is somewhat groundbreaking. And I think people don't know what to say to people when someone dies. They don't really know how they themselves should handle loss. It's really confusing. And the first book I ever wrote was about grief. I called it What's Heaven, and it was for children. But it really came from my own experience, having experienced traumatic loss in my own life growing up and not knowing how to deal with it because nobody talked about it. So as a kid, you walk around going, wow, somebody just died and we're throwing a football. Isn't this weird? And no one validates that. So I'm a big believer that if you can validate something, it gives people permission to talk about it. So those women, 3 of them are I think, very courageous to have the conversation. It's not easy. And I myself am in the midst of it myself, and having just lost my mother and my uncle. So I'm actually nervous about getting through it.
Well, I was going to ask, it's not been an easy year for you.
No.
And you were taking this on in the middle of that. How are you doing? How's the family doing?
Well, it's one, I kind of try to say to myself, I actually take it hour by hour. I'm looking to stay an hour ahead of myself. I'm one of those people who's practicing denial just to get through this conference, and I know it. And, I sat in my bed last night and wept. That's the truth. So I say to myself, okay, I got to get through the next 2 days, and then I don't know. I have to go home and pack up my parents' house. And, it's life, but you don't know, is this okay for me to be feeling this way? Does anybody else feel, should I be working? Should I not be working? Should I be throwing myself in 20 hours a day? I think grief is one of those things that we don't know how to talk about. We don't know how to process, and sometimes you feel silly that you can't pull it together. And I say in the little speech, people say to you, go ahead, fall apart. Are you done yet? They say, go ahead, you can cry. You got to be strong. It's very conflicting messages about grief. And I think when everybody who's ever lost their mother has come up to me and said, you really, as a woman, I think, see your life while your mother's alive, and then you're a very different woman after you lose your mother. And so I'm in the process of trying to find out who that is.
You gather all of these women here. This, as this is happening, you've also just released a pretty groundbreaking study, updating something that was started in the 1950s that talks about the transformation of women over these last many decades. Some good news, some bad news. Right. If you look at it, what was most striking to you of everything in that research?
Well, it was a lot of things were really striking to me. One, that we still don't get paid what men get paid. I think what's striking about this, quote, women's movement is that men want to be a part of it. I think that's really.
Well, they're out of it?
Well, I think men have certainly felt left out of it. I think, they're constantly, I have 4 brothers, and they always say to me, the women are taking over everything. What about the poor men? Or they always say to me a lot of the time, there's all these women's groups, but we men don't know what they're talking about at the women's groups. Or you have this women's conference, we don't know what's going on in there. And so I've actually tried to get a lot of men to speak here. I've even told people to bring the men in their lives, because I think the more we can communicate together, our children benefit from it, our businesses benefit. All the businesses that we looked at in the report that had men and women as colleagues seminars did better.
You are having some key people from the Obama administration here as well, I know. What role should government take on in all of this?
Well, government is the biggest employer in the nation, and they can become a model employer. President Obama is the biggest CEO, and I think he can, by talking about it, I think using the bully pulpit is really important. By talking about the negotiations he had in his own home when he was less financially secure, I think people can identify with that. I think the more the government can talk about paid family leave and flexible hours and job sharing and be the model employer, businesses will come around, because it's not really up to just government. It has to be up to businesses, faith-based institutions, educational institutions, and, after-school programs. I think everybody has to come to a seat at the table. I think the president can hold kitchen table conversations in the White House. He can shine a light that this is an economic issue, smart economics, smart politics. And I think the political figure, be it a man or a woman, who gets this right, will get the country right.